Hi, Dayna.
Oh, let me sit down.
Okay, great.
There we go.
As many of you may know, about 2 months ago, on March 24th, myself and 14 other teenagers traveled with the Maya Gold Foundation to Kathmandu, Nepal. Prior to departing, we had a bunch of preliminary meetings about talking about what we were going to do on the trip, scheduling, and more importantly, some issues that we might encounter while we were there. A lot of our time spent in the meetings, we talked about the immense amount of poverty that is in Nepal and how we could deal with seeing it, as in the US we don't experience that on a day-to-day basis. We discussed ways to handle it and what we could do if we were feeling uncomfortable with the amount of poverty. I was well aware of the fact that I was traveling to a third world country and that in Nepal about 25% of the people fall below the international poverty line of about $1.25 a day. And according to the World Bank, Nepal is the poorest country in Southeast Asia. But what I didn't know was how happy the people of Nepal are, despite the immense amount of poverty and hardships that they face. The yearly per capita income in Nepal is a mere 120 US dollars. That comes to about 33 cents a day. That's 33 cents to feed, clothe, house yourself, and even a family. So what makes people of Nepali people so happy? How can they live off of an average of 366% less income than the average in the US and still be willing to share what little they have with their guests? Why are we as Americans so much more discontent with our lives despite the wealth of our country? First, a few basic concepts of happiness need to be understood. The most important being extrinsic versus intrinsic happiness. Extrinsic happiness comes from material items, wealth, status, and is often short-lived and leaves you wanting more. For example, you're feeling sad, you go out to lunch with some friends, you get a milkshake, it's really good and it puts a smile on your face. But for intrinsic happiness, it comes from things like following a passion, personal growth, and loving relationships. Many people in the US tend to focus on means of extrinsic happiness when they're unhappy because they're often quickly obtained and easy to get, such as going out to lunch. It's not to say that we should avoid these things, because it's important to make memories with your friends and put a smile on your face, but thinking that these are ways that will fulfill you with everlasting happiness is wrong. Another important thing to understand in this concept is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So this answers the question of if we can really buy happiness. Money is actually only really required to fulfill physiological needs and safety needs, such as putting food on your table, clothing, somewhere to sleep, your health. After that, love and belonging, esteem, and self-actualization all come from within and don't require any money. This can often be modeled as a law of diminishing returns. So as you make once you reach a certain amount of money, your happiness plateaus, showing that it really doesn't have effect on it anymore. So what are we doing wrong? What is Nepal doing right that allows them to feel fulfilled despite their barely making ends meet? I talked to a few of my friends in Nepal, and they about why they think that their country is so happy in comparison to our country, and they offered some interesting responses, and I think 4 of them are what makes up like there's 4 main principles of why I think that this is occurring. First, they appreciate the little things. Things like friends, family, achievements in school and sports. They don't expect much to be handed to them and to be praised for everything that they do. So when they are, it means a lot to them. Secondly, they share their emotions through times of happiness and through times of sorrow. This transparency and vulnerability comes from their deeply rooted cultural respect. The respect for, which I'll get into in the next one, but this respect for one another allows them to be open about their feelings and to let their guard down. This kind of speaks to the point that, which my misconception going into this project was that the people of Nepal are so much more happy than us. But in reality, they just know how to express it a lot better, and they don't keep it inside and masked by other aspects. And then thirdly, they have respect not only for those that they know and love, but also for complete strangers. In Nepal, there's a common Sanskrit phrase, which I might not have the pronunciation right, but it's Ati Devo Bhava, which means guests are gods. So when we traveled there, anywhere we entered someone's home or community center, we were marked with tika, which goes on your third eye. It's made up of hibiscus flowers and either marigold necklaces or prayer scarves. And this is exactly what they leave at the monuments of their gods. So this one's one right here that I saw. So they have the tika all over and the marigolds. So they're desiring a connection with people they don't even know and raising their respect to them to almost a godlike standard, which was extremely profound to me for them to have such respect for people that they barely knew. And lastly, the role that unity plays in Nepal furthers the happiness of their nation. Being connected to the people around them allows for them to push past some of the most horrible natural disasters and poverty. They've created a community of love and respect for both their elders and their juniors, which has really brought them this internal and intrinsic happiness. So looking at my survey results, I found that I asked people, what does happiness mean to you? And most of them expressed a feeling of fulfillment, feeling of love, a positive impact, and being a part of the world. They're all expressing means of intrinsic happiness. So I was extremely curious as to why we can strive so hardly to have this internal fulfillment, but yet still reach for wealth and material items as a cure to being unhappy. So I've offered a solution. As the 4 basic principles I mentioned before in Nepal can easily be incorporated into our lives here in the US. They may sound simple and basic, but sometimes the simplest solutions can be the easiest to implement and thus the most effective. So, okay. So first, appreciate the little things. Take a step back and realize the privilege that we have here in the US. It's not to say that we should feel guilty for what we do have, but rather not aspire for more than we have and to just take in what we do have. Allow yourself to be vulnerable and transparent. Put your guard down every once in a while. Find people that you feel comfortable with and allow them to see your real feelings. This allows you, and along with the concept of community and unity, allows you to share your burden of unhappiness with others and lift yourself up to a higher place. And respect everyone. I personally believe that nothing good can come from putting negative energy out into the world. So if we reflect more positive energy, more likely than not will come back to us. In order to make the changes in the way that we feel, it has to come from within. It has to come from us. And if we want to make the change in the way that we perceive happiness, we have to actively work towards it. With all of this, maybe we can be one step to living in a society like Nepal, where happiness comes from within, from what you love, doing what you love and surrounding yourself with ones that love you. That's it.